Welcome everyone to my channel. Today I have 3 true horror stories that will send chills down your spine. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. As a new YouTuber, I would really appreciate your support by subscribing and hitting the like button. It means a lot and helps me create more content for you. So, without further ado, let's dive into this spine-chilling true story. There was a family who lived in a small town in Indiana. The father, mother, and 2 young daughters were happy and content with their life until they moved into a new house in 1974. The family noticed strange things happening in the house from the very beginning. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut, and there were strange noises coming from the walls. The daughters would often wake up in the middle of the night, feeling as though they were being watched. The strange occurrences continued to happen over the next few months, and the family couldn't explain why. They decided to call in a paranormal investigator to see if they could help. The investigator found that the house had a history of tragic events. In the 1920s, a family had lived in the house and their daughter had died in a mysterious accident. In the 1940s, a man had committed suicide in one of the bedrooms. The investigator believed that the spirits of the deceased family members were still present in the house, and they were unhappy with the new family living there. The family was advised to perform a cleansing ritual to try and get rid of the negative energy in the house. The ritual seemed to work at first, but the family soon realized that the spirits were still there. One night, the family woke up to find all of the furniture in the living room stacked on top of each other. They tried to leave the house, but the doors were all locked from the outside. The family was trapped in the house with the angry spirits. The father tried to break down the door, but he couldn't. The family was trapped in the house for days, and they were unable to get any help. The family was eventually found by a neighbor who had noticed that they hadn't been seen in a while. When the neighbor entered the house, they found the family huddled together in fear. The family was traumatized by the experience and moved out of the house immediately. The house remained empty for many years until it was eventually torn down. However, the spirits that haunted the house are said to still be present in the area to this day. The events that happened to this family are still considered to be one of the most terrifying and unexplainable paranormal experiences in Indiana's history. And while the house may be gone, the stories of the spirits that haunted it live on, making it a true horror story that will never be forgotten. Wow, that last story was truly horrifying. If you're anything like me, you're probably feeling a little spooked right now. But that's the thrill of it all, isn't it? We love to scare ourselves silly with these tales of the supernatural. Speaking of which, I have another bone-chilling story for you that's sure to send shivers down your spine. So sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for another terrifying tale. The year was 1922, and the town of Estes Park, Colorado, was a popular vacation spot for wealthy families seeking a tranquil escape from city life. Among those families was the Stanley family, who were the owners of the famous Stanley Hotel. The hotel was known for its grandeur, luxurious amenities, and scenic views of the Rocky Mountains. However, something sinister was brewing within its walls. In the summer of 1911, a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson was tending to room 217 when she suffered a terrible accident. The gas lamps in the room malfunctioned, and an explosion occurred, causing Elizabeth to plummet through the floor. Miraculously, she survived the fall but was left with severe injuries. She was confined to bed rest for weeks and eventually recovered fully. However, Elizabeth's accident was just the beginning of the strange occurrences that would plague the Stanley Hotel for years to come. The Stanley family continued to own and operate the hotel until 1926, when they sold it to a man named Roe Emery. Roe and his wife Flora had grand plans for the hotel, but they would soon realize that the hotel had a dark and mysterious past that they couldn't ignore. In the years following their ownership, numerous guests reported strange occurrences in the hotel, from phantom footsteps and ghostly apparitions to unexplained smells and sounds. One of the most famous ghostly tales from the Stanley Hotel involves a young girl named Lucy. In the 1970s, a family was staying in room 418 when their daughter, who was believed to be around 4 years old, began talking to an unseen presence named Lucy. The family thought nothing of it until they found out that the hotel didn't have any employees named Lucy. To this day, guests continue to report sightings of the young girl in the hallways and staircases of the hotel. But Lucy isn't the only ghost said to haunt the Stanley Hotel. There's also the ghost of a woman named Mrs. Wilson, who is believed to be the same Elizabeth Wilson who survived the gas explosion in room 217. Mrs. Wilson is said to be a helpful spirit, tidying up guests' rooms and even making their beds. Some guests have even reported feeling a gentle touch on their backs, as if someone is tucking them in at night. However, not all of the ghosts at the Stanley Hotel are friendly. Some guests have reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread in certain parts of the hotel, as if they're being watched by an unseen, malevolent force. In one particularly chilling incident, a guest named Paul was staying in room 407 when he woke up to find a faceless figure standing at the end of his bed. The figure appeared to be wearing a top hat and a long coat, and Paul could feel an icy breath on his face. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, but Paul was left with a feeling of terror that would haunt him for years to come. Even famous horror author Stephen King couldn't escape the eerie presence of the Stanley Hotel. In 1974, he and his wife Tabitha stayed in room 217 and were the only guests in the hotel at the time. The hotel was preparing to close for the season, and the Kings were left to explore the empty corridors and ballrooms on their own. It was during this stay that King reportedly had a nightmare about his young son being chased by a demonic fire hose through the hotel's hallways. This nightmare would go on to inspire his famous novel, The Shining, which was later adapted into a movie starring Jack Nicholson. The Stanley Hotel remains a popular tourist destination to this day, and guests continue to report strange occurrences and ghostly sightings. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, there's no denying that. Before we move on to the next chilling tale, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've heard so far. These stories may be terrifying, but they also remind us of the power of the unknown and the unexplained. Perhaps it's the fear of the unknown that draws us to these stories, or maybe it's the rush of adrenaline that comes with being scared out of our wits. Whatever the reason, we keep coming back for more. And speaking of more, if you're enjoying these stories, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for even more spine-tingling tales. Your support helps us bring you more of the content you love, and we appreciate every single one of you. So, grab a blanket and a cup of tea, and get ready for another terrifying journey into the unknown. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get started. In the summer of 1979, a group of 5 friends set out on a camping trip in the remote forests of California. They were all experienced campers and had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. On the second night of their trip, they decided to explore the woods around their campsite. As they walked deeper into the forest, they noticed that the trees began to thin out and the ground became rockier. After walking for about an hour, they stumbled upon a cave that they had never seen before. It was small and dark, but they were curious and decided to explore it. As they entered the cave, they could feel a strange energy in the air. The temperature dropped significantly, and they could hear a faint humming sound coming from deep within the cave. As they ventured further in, they came across a small chamber with strange symbols etched into the walls. They couldn't decipher the symbols, but they knew that they were ancient and had some kind of significance. Suddenly, they heard a loud thud coming from the direction they had come. They turned around and saw that the entrance to the cave had been sealed shut with a large boulder. Panic set in as they realized that they were trapped in the cave with no way out. They searched for another way out, but the cave seemed to be a dead end. Hours turned into days, and the friends began to lose hope. They were running low on food and water, and the air was becoming stale and difficult to breathe. On the 4th day of their captivity, they heard strange noises coming from outside the cave. It sounded like growling and snarling, as if some kind of wild animal was lurking outside. The noises continued for hours, and the friends began to fear for their lives. They huddled together, praying that they would survive whatever was outside. As the sun began to set on the 4th day, the noises suddenly stopped. The friends waited in silence, not daring to move or make a sound. But then, they heard something even more terrifying, a faint whisper that seemed to be coming from within the cave. It was a voice that they didn't recognize, and it was speaking in a language that they couldn't understand. The voice grew louder and more frantic, and the friends could feel an overwhelming sense of fear washing over them. Suddenly, the boulder blocking the entrance to the cave was pushed aside, and they could see the light of day streaming in. They stumbled out of the cave, weak and disoriented. As they looked around, they realized that they were no longer in the same forest they had entered just days ago. The trees were twisted and gnarled, and the sky was a sickly shade of green. They could hear strange noises coming from all around them, and they realized that they were no longer alone. They had stumbled into a parallel universe, a world where the rules of physics and reality were completely different. The friends never spoke of their ordeal to anyone, fearing that they would be labeled as crazy. But they never forgot the terror they experienced in that dark, ancient cave, and they knew that they had been forever changed by their brush with the unknown. And there you have it, 3 spine-tingling horror stories that will haunt your dreams for nights to come. These tales serve as a reminder that sometimes the things we fear most are the things we can't explain or control. But fear not, for there will be more tales of horror to come. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on our latest uploads. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you more of the content you love. Until next time, sleep well and try not to let your nightmares get the best of you. Good night.